Hey there. I need to come back to Romans 5. I had to take a little break. I've Genesis, by the way, is now officially available. People are ordering it, and I can actually start shipping the print book. Again, it's about 500 pages. It's volume 1. There'll be 2 volumes, I think. But I really want to do John, and there's a bunch I want to do, but we'll see. I will come back to Genesis. But, I don't do a whole lot of advertising for these because I noticed that very few people watch those videos, but a friend of mine pointed out to me that that's because they are not in the same style as your normal videos. They're not the same length. And it could be YouTube is not pushing those. That's fine. Things sort of trickle in. People become aware. So, as of now, I think there's 15 books. Let's see. There's quite a few books available for print, and not all of them are huge. The big ones, in terms of size, are Galatians, 1 John Decoded, Romans, Genesis, and Hebrews. Those are all 400 to 500 pages. But then there's these smaller books that are really handy. So, like 100 pages. And that would be holiness comes from assurance, not the other way around. Christ is satisfaction, the reality of sanctification. Progressive revelation in Paul's gospel. There's people who want me to do a James book, but it's covered partially in there. So, the nature of God the idea that God revealed things later that he didn't reveal to the apostles. See, people think apostles means I'm so holy I know everything, because they view apostles like the world religion views mystics, as if they've reached some plateau of enlightenment. That's not what an apostle is. An apostle means sent one that is a witness to truths that have been revealed to him. Paul was an apostle not of the earthly Jesus. See, the apostles in Jerusalem were the witnesses of the earthly Jesus. His ministry under law, as a man in the flesh, as a minister to the circumcision, which means the Jews with all the promises, to confirm the promises made to the fathers. That was his role, was to confirm the kingdom. And to prepare those who are supposed to inherit it, to recognize that they don't have any qualification in themselves to inherit the kingdom. And to tell them to believe in him. Then to accomplish the work, right? Which is at his death and resurrection what he did. What had not been revealed in full was that he was not just the propitiation for their sin, for the sins of the nation. The prophets had testified to that, but of the whole world. And that all the Gentiles who didn't have all these traditions and promises were going to be invited in. And that this is not a matter of law or righteousness in ourselves. It is a matter of vindicating God in his choice to give everything he has to men, even though they've been brought into absolute depravity. And it's a declaration of his love. It's a declaration of his mercy, his forgiveness. That's what the cross is. And the cross is, you can see the cross. You can see Jesus dying on the cross in the Gospels, but you don't really understand what's happening. There's no real... The apostles were confused. They didn't go, oh yeah, he's fulfilling Isaiah 53 right there. Did you know that? No, they ran and hid. They were scattered. They were weeping. They looked at this as a tragic loss. And their hopes were dashed and everything. They were disillusioned. Well, why would they think that? Well, because when you're in extreme stress, it's hard to remember an argument from Isaiah 53. That this is what's happening. But also, it wasn't super clear that this was the fulfillment of those prophecies. while you're going through it, And also, there's a revelation that was given. See, they were the witnesses to all these events. And then they witnessed that he rose again. Okay? And he did explain some things about the kingdom, but he said, there were many things I would tell you, but I cannot yet. And you can't understand them because they're spiritually discerned. And then he ascended to the right hand of God and sat down at the throne. Then he calls Paul. And it's through Paul that he reveals as the ascended Christ the heavenly perspective of what had happened. That this is for the whole world, that the kingdom is free, that it's freely available, there's no rules to get in, there's nothing barring you from getting in but your own self-righteousness and unbelief. The people who don't run in are those who reject it. And you say, well, they didn't understand, they didn't know. No, they do know. They're suppressing the truth in unrighteousness. They know. See, God's already communicated. We saw this in Romans 1 and 2. There's already a communication that every man's accountable for, which is the whole universe, your DNA, the design of everything, beauty. The attributes of God are clearly seen in the creation, and they're known and understood by the things that are made. But man suppresses the truth in unrighteousness and glorifies himself. That's really what it is. He resents the idea that he was created, that he is not his own, and there's no amount of telling him how good God is and how much he wants to be a father to him if he's opposed to the idea in the first place. And there's some people that just harden and harden and harden against the grace of God, and they will never receive it. But it's freely available. And yeah, it's up to you whether you believe or not, whether you can open to the truth. And our whole human life, according to Paul, everybody on this planet was distributed in time and space according to their own inclinations and aptitudes and shape of their soul to be in the best, most optimal place to embrace the truth of the kingdom. Whether before the cross or after the cross, and I always make the joke, I could never live in the Little House on the Prairie days. I would die of a splinter. Paul would tell me to go out and, get the wood hacked for the fire, and I'd come in with a splinter and I'd just die. There's no way I could live without air conditioning. And my mind, I need something to fill my mind that, the reason I was able to embrace the cosmic scale of the Bible and see it that way with fresh eyes so I could finally receive the truth in it was because of all of my background in science fiction and fantasy. And I read so many hundreds of books that were shaped for my appetite, which was shaped for, I need somebody to tell me about an interstellar kingdom. Don't tell me about, you get to go to heaven when you die. Who cares? But I can relate to the idea of Jerusalem and exalted Israel being home base for a kingdom that spreads throughout the universe. That appeals to me. And resurrected king priests inheriting everything with Christ and of his kingdom and its increase. There shall be no end. It just goes on and on and on. Age after age, God revealing attributes in himself that no angel or man has ever seen, putting it on display in great works that take ages to accomplish. That fits my sci-fi mind. Ephesians fits my sci-fi mind. Spiritual warfare. Well, there's a whole lot of things that really, it's not that they're new truth, but it's that there's a generation that's been shaped to be able to receive it in that kind of language. I'm not doing justice to what's in my mind right now, but the point is, Paul said to the philosophers in Acts, he said, God set the seasons that man lives in, every man, and the boundaries of their habitation where they live, so that groping they would seek him and they would find him. And he is not far off. He's within reach of every person, easily, because he says, in him we move and live and have our being. And he was talking about God's sovereignty there in distributing everybody so that they are optimally placed to receive the gospel in the way that their mind has been suited and their personality is suited to receive it. So it's not like God, and that is the only thing God sees. The kingdoms are a drop in the bucket to him. Egypt, Persia, when the world tells history, they talk about Babel, Samaria, the Chaldees, and then the rise of Egypt and Babylon and Persia and Greece. Very Western, right? But then Rome, then the disintegration of Rome, and then whatever this final thing is with the European nations in the West and whatever this new world order is going to be. That's how they look at the world. And God doesn't look at his world like that. He looks at every person that he's made in Adam, where he placed them, when, and how to get the message to them. That's all. That's why we're distributed where we are. And that is his choice. And he pleads with men their whole life until their last breath. And those who go rejecting him have hardened themselves their whole life and warped themselves their whole life. You have to warp yourself to accommodate whatever belief system you're holding in your mind to suppress the truth that you already know. To suppress the truth that you already know and understand of God's attributes, his nature, that you live in a world created by God, that everything that you see that's beautiful is a witness to his attributes. We know this intuitively. The only way to do that, to deny it, is to, and put yourself in his place, is to suppress the truth in unrighteousness, which has to do with the conscience. And the conscience is there to witness, excusing you or accusing you. So if you have a conscience that's functioning, you know when you're doing something wrong, you know when you're doing something right. And you know what you're believing, whether it's true or not. You know when you're embracing a lie and rejecting the truth on purpose. And men do this on purpose. And so their conscience, accusing them, the way they deal with it is to develop sophisticated, complex, and exhausting ways of reasoning to justify themselves. This is where self-righteousness comes in. To justify themselves while their conscience accuses them. This is not what I wanted to talk about. I was going to talk about progressive revelation, but this is what I think anyway. To do that, to silence the voice of your conscience and let reason ascend, so that your reasons for believing lies and accepting them and embracing them, putting yourself in the place of God and denying him, and rejecting the truth that you know, that takes a very strong See, the Calvinists say man is so weak he can't do anything, but it's actually man's strength that is the problem. It takes a super strong resistance against something in your face every day. At the deepest level of your consciousness, the reality of God and righteousness and his attributes, holiness, righteousness, love, and light, these are known to you. And the way you're supposed to respond is to accept that there is come to a crisis where you accept that there's a difference between what you are and what God is, and that you don't know him. See, all these things are witnessed. This is why religion exists. They all know this. They're alienated from the God that their senses testify of moment from moment, and their conscience shows them the difference. Okay? What are you supposed to do? Well, the most deceived people say, well, I'll do everything God commands me, and I'll make it in. I will please him by my works. You know, the nation of Israel did that at the Mount Sinai when God gave the law, which was a ministration of condemnation and death and a diagnosis of a terminal illness. He gave them this law, said, if you can keep it, you can enter into the blessing, you can enter into the good land, you'll be the head and not the tail, above only and not beneath. Blessed going in and blessed going out. But if you can't keep it, you don't keep it, you'll be cursed. You'll be under everything. You'll be cursed in the city, cursed in the field. I won't go with you, and you'll be devoured by your adversaries, torn apart. Instead of saying, Lord have mercy, what do we do? They said, all that God has commanded we shall do. That is absolute deception. At the deepest level, a complete rejection of the truth. The law was not given for you to keep. It was given for you to recognize the truth. And that is related to what we'll get into in Romans 5, that God gave the law so that the offense may abound. That surprises people. He actually gave the law to increase offenses. Because people by nature suppress the truth in unrighteousness and will not regard any witness against themselves. That's self-righteousness and pride. Well, what he did was he gave them a law that was like the embodiment of what righteous living should look like if you were to do it naturally. But the fact that it has to be given as a law is already a witness against you. I use the example, if you come into my house and you see signs all over the place that say, pick up your, pick up the food trash in your room, wipe down the toilet, don't leave clean up the dog poop. If I come home and I see dog poop all over the kitchen floor, I'm going to be furious. The moldy, take your trash down because it's developing mold, all those kind of things. Those are all rules, right? Imposed from without. But what do they say? They say that you're living with a slob who can't control himself. Nobody goes, oh, wow, look at the beauty of these rules in this household when they see signs like that all around. But that's what the Jews did. And that's what Christians do. They enshrine the law, and they say, oh, look at this beautiful law, and because I agree with it, that must mean I'm good. That's called virtue signaling. Just like in today's culture. You don't have to actually do anything righteous. All you have to do is yell at the right group of people, and someone will praise you and say, wow, you're very virtuous. That's virtue signaling when you say, oh, the law is holy and good, and I agree with it, therefore that shows that I'm righteous. No, it doesn't. It doesn't show, it shows you're a slob. If you agree with the law, that doesn't help you be more righteous because you can't keep it. If you agree with it and delight in it, I'm talking about the administration of condemnation and death. Don't confuse that with what David called the law. He said, I delight in your law, you know. There were several different Hebrew words for law in the Old Testament, but when David spoke of the law, he spoke of Moses and the prophets. It was the totality of everything that it represented, not little bits and pieces. What the religious people do is they just have little bits and pieces, and they like the instructive bits. The stuff that tells you, if you do that, you're going to hell. If you don't do that, you're not, God doesn't like you. Which isn't what it says, but the point is, they think that if they agree with these things, all the prescriptive things, then that means they're a good person. Well, that's a way of suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, virtue signaling to God, and refusing to accept his judgment. And that's why everybody is so mad about what we teach about our death with Christ and James, which he did not see that truth. It was not revealed yet. Our death to the law. Oh, the pastors can't even get their head around that. They think that the law is just circumcision or old ordinances like that the Jews had to keep, keeping feasts. No, the law is thou shalt not covet, which means don't even have the desire in the first place. They say, we don't teach the law, we teach the commandments of Christ. And they're referring to the Sermon on the Mount when he said, if you lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery. If you call your brother a fool, you're in danger of hellfire. Cut your eye out if it offends you. It's better to enter the kingdom maimed than to be thrown in a lake of fire whole. He was talking to religious people who were self-righteous and thought they were justified just because they agreed with the law. And all it did was make them shut the doors of the kingdom, to all of Israel. Anybody they deemed a sinner was out. So the purpose of the law, according to Romans 5, is that sin would abound and the offense would even increase. And that's a surprise. This is one of the reasons why Paul has to address in Romans 6 the accusation that he's teaching, let us sin, let us do evil so that grace may come. Why would God give something that would make, if he's righteous, why would he give the law knowing that it's going to increase sin? And in Paul's teaching, the law is the strength of sin. And it's only through our death to the law that we ever see fruitfulness or any hope. What does the law do? It enjoins your flesh to try to do what is not in its nature to do. And in doing that, your flesh gets exposed. And it's so that your conscience will see it and accuse you. But unfortunately, people are warped. Okay? Human beings are warped. Their conscience is warped and their consciousness is warped. This is supernatural. The reason people reject God and reject the gospel is because they are warped. They deny something that is supposed to bring them in crisis that's in their face all day. I was thinking about Romans 5 and how we were all created in Adam and in one man, and God said the man was good. We all existed as genetic potential within him, right? God said the man is good and blessed it, doubly good, very good. He didn't create anybody evil in Adam. And not only that, but this man was in the image of God with his likeness, and he gave him authority. He had trusted everything under the sky, at least, to him. Now, the second man, he entrusts the entire the throne of heaven to. Christ is the second man, ascended not to rule in a garden over the earth, but to rule from heaven over angels. He gives everything to him. But man was appointed to rule over everything on the earth, right, under the heavens. And he's glorious. I don't think we have any idea what man was like before the fall. All of our science, by the way, is post-fall, post-collapse, post-curse, post-entropy, post-death. So all the scientists are making who deny God, not all the scientists deny God, but the ones that do, are making observations about a universe, assuming that what they're observing today through their, telescopes and their scientific measurements, is representative of the way it's always been. They deny a catastrophic fall. And from that, they try to extrapolate age of the universe. They try to extrapolate distances. They try to extrapolate what the beginning of the universe looked like. And they have no idea, and there's no way to see it, because all the rules are different. The universe after the fall is completely different than the universe before the fall, and we don't have a way to look into it except by the Word. Whatever God tells us about it. And the same is true with man. Man was created in the image of God. And I was flipping through, I was remembering flipping through memes of people at Walmart. That they love to show pictures of people at Walmart because people really let it all hang out there. Can you imagine giving somebody like we are today dominion? No way. We are so fallen and so warped, and yet part of the warpage is that we don't know it. We think this is normal, and we think that this is the product of evolution and the survival of the fittest, and this is the fittest that evolution has been able to select? Is this the Walmart crowd? So we are so fallen and so depraved, but we don't know it because part of the warping. For us to be able to deny God and deny our conscience and silence it and justify ourselves, coming out thinking that we're good. And the most heinous example of that is when God gives the law, they say, all that God has commanded we will do. As if that's their virtue. He's saying, no, this is a witness against you. You're a fail. You're a fail miserably. If you break it in one point, you've broken the whole thing. What I'm looking for is not a people who are trying to be good and trying to be holy and trying to be righteous when they're not. I'm going to create a people. The kingdom is going to consist of a people who are recreated so that they are good and holy and righteous. Not because of any effort on their part, but because of what they are by a new creation. That's what the kingdom is. The kingdom is people that, in resurrection, who will no longer be corruptible. There will be no more sorrow, no more sin, no more sickness, no more death, no more any of that, any negative thing, because there will no longer be an instrument for something evil to express itself through. Man will no longer be available, and neither will the angels, to evil. And that's another thing that we're going to get into with Romans 5 through 8, is that not only did the law come in so that sin may abound, so that man would be wakened up in his senses to see what he is, but the principle of sin is not something you do. Sin is something that acts apart from your will. Sin is something that entered in. Sin is something foreign. It doesn't come actually from man. This is what God sees. He's a physician. He doesn't want to be a judge. He wants to be your physician. And he sees that you've been infected with a terminal illness. And you're so deceived that, number one, you think you're righteous. Number two, you're able to deny God every day and silence the voice of your own conscience, which is accusing you every day, and hold it together and live. This kind of cognitive dissonance is so unhealthy that it should bring you into a state of complete collapse. Nobody can live like that unless they are super strong in resisting and justifying and holding arguments together and puffing themselves up in pride and vanity to be able to resist the truth that's perpetually underscoring everything they do. Okay, so there's a lot of people who do really well in the world who are praised by men. They're philanthropical. They do all these good things. And you have no idea how wicked they are, how much they hate God, and what they're holding together in order to maintain this facade. This is why sinners, the wicked, the adulteresses who had 7 husbands, and the demon-possessed, the lepers, prostitutes, tax collectors, and the publicans were the ones that flocked to Jesus, because they did not have the strength to do what the Pharisees were doing. If they could have, they would have. They could not convince anybody that they were righteous, not alone themselves. And Jesus' message was for them. He said, I didn't come for the righteous, but for the sinners. The whole don't need a physician, only the sick, but we're all sick. The difference is there are some people who will not receive the terminal diagnosis. You know, it's like if I tell you you have cancer, I tell you, those headaches you're having, and the nosebleeds, and the weakness and the tiredness, turns out that the root cause is something foreign that has entered into your body and is going to kill you. And you're come away from that, say, you know what, if I stop sniffling, and I can get rid of these headaches, and I can get exercise and not be tired anymore, then I won't have cancer. And that's what people who think that they can be justified by the law are doing. They think that by remediating some of the symptoms of their absolute depravity and unrighteousness, they're going to make themselves righteous. You can't change your nature, and you can't deal with sin. Sin is not just something you do. Sin is something that got into you that takes you captive and makes you do what it wants you to do. It's personified. It's the spirit that operates in the sons of disobedience. It's supernatural. There's people who are so tempted by things, but they think they can control it and hold it at bay. And those things are absolutely going to destroy their lives. And the reason they're going to destroy their lives is not because God's not available to them, but because they think they can manage it. Well, I will entertain that to a certain degree, but then no more. No. You're letting it in. It's crouching at the door. It's going to devour you and take over and run rampage through your house. Destroy everything. And you're not going to be able to stop it. A sinner who is saved by grace is a person who recognizes this and has been brought into crisis. I have no answer, really, for dealing with sin. Besetting sins, addictive sins, sins that I have no idea how to control this. This thing is raging out of my control. I have no idea what to do. I can't control it. I know now that no amount of willing it to go away will make it go away. I know no amount of saying stop, will make the thirst and hunger that's raging in me for something wicked that's going to destroy my whole life go away. What am I going to do? Well, the one who learns grace is the one who learns, I don't have a method, I have a person. Jesus Christ. He's here, he's available. And I just say, Lord, you got to put a stop to it. There's been situations where many times, especially in the last 5 years, where it's a supernatural attack that is coming at me from every direction to bring me into some sort of horrible situation. And I know I have no power to overcome it. I'm not strong enough to resist it. And so I just cry out to the Lord. I say, I can't even stop the desire. There's a desire raging in me that if this thing's given opportunity, it's going to destroy everything. And I say, Lord, please. I know it's a wicked desire, but I'm not under condemnation for having it. I know it's no longer I that sins, but the sin that dwells in me. I don't want to yield my members to it. I want to yield myself to you. Not thinking that you're going to give me some instruction to obey, but trusting you to erase the situation from my life. I need you to just come in with grace. And this is what the law and grace is supposed to do. So in Romans 5, and I still want to get into it, but nevertheless, death ran. See, until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed where there's no law. By one man, sin entered into the world. See, sin is something that was not natural to us, that entered in through an act of disobedience. And it's something that from Romans 5 to Romans 8, you're going to see as a principle. Like gravity, it's a law. It's not just something you do, it's something way more powerful than you. And because of sin, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those who had not sinned after the way he did, right? And he's a figure of Christ in that sense, and we'll talk about all that. But not as the offense, so is the free great gift. For if by the offense many be dead, I get it in my classes, much more the grace of God and the gift of grace, which is by one man, Jesus Christ, has abounded to many. And not as it was by one that sinned, so also is the gift. For the judgment was by one to condemnation, but the free gift is of many offenses to justification. In other words, what it's saying is, the curse came because of one man's act. We're all brought into death. And we'll talk about that because I'll show you from Romans 5 why I believe that children are whose conscience is not formed are not brought into judgment. But anyway, the judgment was by one to condemnation, but the free gift is of many offenses to justification. So the free gift is not like the curse. The curse was one man sinned and everybody dies. Okay? But the gift is everybody sins and sins and sins. And yet, there's a free gift unto justification from all these offenses. Not just one offense, but many offenses. Our whole life, we just breathe sin and blasphemy. Every imagination of our heart is evil only continually. That's how God decreed it back at the flood, and it's still true today. I know people that literally every imagination of their heart is evil. And I will include myself in that, except by the grace of God, He has kind of renewed my mind. You know? But if you don't have the Word in you, every imagination of your heart is evil. Even the things you want to do and set about with your gifts and talents and do this, it's all vainglory. And it's all about you being worshipped and displacing God. And it's all about you. And you'll destroy anybody who gets in your way. And these are the good people that the world goes, oh, they're really doing good. You know? But anyway, for if by one man's offense death reigned by one, much more they receive the abundance of grace. The gift of righteousness shall reign in life. These are the people who did many offenses. These are the ungodly who worked not, but believed on him who justifies the ungodly. They have nothing to commend themselves. They're recipients of grace. Oh gosh, I had to take my dog to the appointment. I gotta get going here. Therefore, as by the one offense, judgment came unto all, unto condemnation. Even so, by the one act of righteousness of Jesus Christ, everybody gets justified. But here's the verse. Moreover, the law entered, that the offense would abound. But where sin abounded, grace did hyperabound. That's the word. That's where we get hyper grace. Superabound. To swallow up sin. That as sin reigned in death, even so grace might reign through righteousness unto eternal life. Now this is a big picture principle, but this is actually how we live our life. Not by sinning so that grace may come, but the fact that all of our offenses are offenses against the law, and the law is given to show what the flesh is so that we would cry out. Because the cancer patient who thinks he can just stop bleeding and stop having headaches will never go get a transfusion. And God needs us on the operating table. And we have to come willingly. That's what it's for. But the warped people misuse the law and think that it commends their righteousness. And that's called virtue signaling. And it's called self-deception at a deepest level. That's why I say the heart of stone is not normal people out in the world. It's religious people who read the Bible every day and come up thinking that they're justified by law keeping and rejecting the gospel. They're the enemies of the gospel. It's the people that populate the churches that are the enemies of the gospel. They're the ones who would tell you faith without works is dead. Even the demons believe and tremble. How do you even know you're saved? They're the ones who will work to undermine your salvation, your assurance before God, with the scripture while justifying themselves. These are perverse people, and they're evil, and they're tares. They're antichrists. Antichrists are in the church. are in the gathering, not in the reality of the body of Christ. Anyway, this is kind of what I wanted to talk about. I may not upload this because I didn't get to close. I opened up a lot of loose ends, and I went on this huge tangent talking about progressive revelation in Paul's gospel. But there's surprising things in the gospel that are not, in Paul's revelation from the ascended Christ, that are not naturally known to men. Men don't naturally come to the conclusion that the law was given that offense may abound, and that it is the strength of sin, and that you have to die to it in Christ. And that we're not to live under a law, we're to live by the mercy of Jesus Christ. And that there's power available by saying, I can do nothing. He has to do everything. That's, people think that, I want what you have. I get a lot of that because I have a channel, You get your face out there and people think that you're something. I'm nothing, and I don't have any methods to teach you. I don't know anything. All I know is what this person is, who this person is, and what he's promised to be. That's all I declare. I don't preach any methods. I don't teach you how. I got nothing. I'm in the same boat you are. I can't overcome anything. The only thing is that we know it. So what do? We have to come to the physician. And we live that way. We're going to live that way for eternity, but it won't always be in the role of a physician. It'll be the bridegroom. Once he's healed us, there's no reason to keep going to the doctor. But as long as we're in this flesh, until that day, we live by the mercy of God. And it's not, oh, have mercy on me, don't judge me. No, it's save me from this present evil age, so that I can still shine as a luminary in it. Not by my righteousness or strength, but by your grace. And to shine as a luminary is not to be more righteous than everybody. It is to illuminate the knowledge of God so that people are actually wanting to come and know him, to join the feast, and to have joy and peace. We're here as ambassadors. We are strangers. This is not our home. And we're not here to build up a righteous life. We're here to invite people to come and to enjoy the feast, enjoy Christ, the tree of life. He was freely available. It's the only thing that matters. And we do things. I'm a musician. I do different things. But those are all platforms for a light to be shining. Say there's something different about him that's not like the other musicians. Is it because he's a better musician? No. Hopefully it's because of Christ. And it's not a religious self-righteousness where I tell everybody that I'm living a holy life and they need to do that too. I got nothing. I got no methods to advertise. There's a fragrance. There's something different. And they go, what is that? I've never seen anything like that before. And that is God's invitation for them to look at something. Like the burning bush. Moses stopped by the burning bush to see why did it burn and not be consumed. It was a thorn bush. It was a picture of the flesh, picture of fallen man, picture of the curse. Yet it was burning. And that is a picture of God in man. He doesn't use us as the fuel. And it causes people to turn aside and go, that's a thorn bush. Why is there fire in it? How could that be? And maybe they'll stop looking at themselves and for minutes suspend all of the arguments they're holding up to hold God off. And with fascination come and see this burning bush. And then you'll say, it's not me. I'm not the fuel for any of this. And maybe they'll think something new. You know how hard it is to get people to think something new? They just think in the rut of what they've always thought while they build up their lies to resist the truth that's right in their face every day and shut down their conscience to enable them to deify themselves and put themselves in the place of God and live however they want. Well, there's some people weak enough and bored enough with all that might come aside and look at a burning bush. Go, what is that? A thorn bush. And that's all I am. And that's all we are. We're just thorn bushes in the wilderness. And it's a little bit of a spectacle for people to come and go, what is that? And God gets them, hopefully. All right, talk to you soon.